As always, when we sit down, it's time for that conversation. Joining me in studio, Phyllis Wakiaga, the CEO, Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Good lady, thank you.
You're
excited
welcome.
to have this manufacturing conversation?
Yeah.
Like you're saying, you heard me say, you're the first female we're having on the show.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
No, I mean, we wouldn't have wanted any other person to
Thank you very much.
debut.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here, and
Yeah.
I'm happy to debut with you. Yes.
Nice. And before we came on air, we were having a discussion about the recently read budget statement, and we were talking about the allocation of to the manufacturing sector and the Big Four agenda in general. Are you guys happy as KAM?
As the Association of Manufacturers, the budget that was read last week, there were a number of positive gains for the manufacturing sector. We've been having conversations about Vision 2030 and the Big Four agenda and how manufacturing is a priority. And out of our engagement with government, we've pointed out some of the areas that need to be addressed. We've done this through the ministry, we've done this at Treasury, we've done this even directly with the President when we had a roundtable specifically on manufacturing. And the budget last week addressed a number of these areas, which in my view is positive.
What were some
for
of
the
those
sector.
wins?
Some of the wins include the fact that the energy rebate scheme that was passed in 2018 has been gazetted again or included in the budget this year. That means that manufacturers are able to get a rebate of 20% of their electricity bills, and that is based on the fact that they have a tax compliance certificate, so that applies to all manufacturers, and there's a 10% rebate additional based on a criteria that has been set up. We've also been discussing the issue about the VAT refund formula that was not allowing manufacturers to offset some of their VAT taxes, input taxes. And what this was doing is it had become a disincentive for export because a number of manufacturers were accumulating high amounts of credits in the KRA system, and that was really locking their cash flow. So that formula has now been reversed to the old formula. That's a positive win.
Yeah.
The other issue is around withholding VAT, which was also leading to a buildup of refunds, I think to the tune of over 100 billion. We were withholding 6% VAT. That has been reduced to 2%. So that's another positive gain that we saw out of the budget last week. The issue of port and logistics, I think when you listen to the CS's speech, that also came up because there's been a lot of delays at the port, and manufacturers have been incurring demurrage charges at the port. So a direction has been given that the port will be utilizing the PVOC system, and all the different agencies at the port would then resort to relying on PVOC and having their conditions therein, and reducing intervention at the port, moving more to intelligence-led. We also saw allocations towards Kirdi. We saw allocations to the textile sector, the amounts that you spoke about. So even from a point of allocation, we've seen positive allocations. The issue of IDF, RDL, the import declaration fee, our ask as manufacturers was to ensure that it gets to zero for raw materials, because what happens is we are competing in a global market and more so in the regional market. And for certain sectors, having the IDF and RDL at a total of 3.5% was leading to an uncompetitive advantage. We saw a slight reduction of IDF from 2 to 1.5%. RDL, however, was not reduced. There were, however, some increases for finished products. So from that overview, a number of proposals that we have put through were considered positively in the budget, and for that the sector is feeling quite supported in terms of addressing the issues of competitiveness.
However, there are sectors that are not happy, particularly the scene industry. And we're also having this conversation, and you're saying there's the right of 5% when there's inflation. However, still these sectors are not happy. They feel like they're being targeted.
That's true. Excise under the Excise Act, there's an inflationary adjustment every year, and the CS also has room to have an additional 10% increase, and I think a full 15% was applied as an increase, and that's a big jump for the sectors. So you must consider that. And also from our members in that sector, the concern is that we keep deepening the tax burden for some of these sectors instead of widening the tax bracket. So what keeps happening? The same sectors get hit every year with additional taxation, which is in the principles of ensuring that we have equitable taxation, not exactly 100% fair. And also the jump is quite big. A 15% inflationary increases. I mean, inflationary plus the 10% discretionary increase is a big jump. Yeah. Yes.
And you know, the sector is one of the sectors that we could say is dear to the president's heart. He's been very passionate about the sector, and when that kind of love and that kind of attention is given to a sector, there's a lot of responsibility. The sector is supposed to contribute 15% to the GDP by 2022 and at least create 800,000 new jobs. Yes. And before we have this conversation, State House spokesperson recently had a press briefing, and this is what she had to say in relation to creating the 800,000 jobs that the government is seeking to create in the sector. Let's go.
Zote imekuwa ni ajira kwa vijana. Asa ningependa tu kurudia mambo mawili matatu ambayo ni kwamba utafahamu ya kwamba kwa mujibu wa economic survey ambayo iliweza kufanywa mwaka 2019 na katika ukurasa wa 39 iliweza kueleza ya kwamba takriban kazi 840 zimeweza kupatikana ama nafasi hizo zimeweza kubuniwa kwa vijana. Na pia tukaweza kusisitiza ya kwamba 85% ya kazi hizo ni katika sekta tunaita informal sector ya mikono. Changamoto pia kwa vijana kuweza kujihusisha sana na swala hili mbali na kutarajia tu kazi za ofisi.
Kanzadena right there saying already 840-something thousand jobs have already been created. Where does the sector stand in relation to job creation?
The manufacturing sector, in terms of the formal manufacturing sector, creates over 300,000 jobs. There are over 1 million jobs created also in the informal sector in manufacturing. But what you must realize about the sector is that for each manufacturing job created, there are 5 jobs created in the support sectors, because manufacturing has a multiplier effect across sectors, and that's a figure that's been determined by economists. The jobs in the sector have not grown as much as they should towards the target of job creation. I think last year they did not grow to the same level. I think 84,000 new jobs, and that for the ambitious target of growing 800,000 jobs is below the target. What the way forward is really is to see how we are able to create SMEs and enable them to grow. If you look at SMEs in Kenya, a lot of them are staying at the micro level. We have a lot of businesses still playing in the informal sector. And these are businesses that really need to come out and play in the formal sector and be supported so that they're able to formalize, they're able to grow. That way they get into the formal sector, they create more stable jobs for the economy. And then there are certain specific sectors that are very labor intensive. If you look at, for example, the textile sector in manufacturing, that's a very labor intensive sector. So sectors like this also require very specific interventions. If you look, for example, at the machinery, the need for a textile upgradation fund would be critical, because the 4 main textile mills in the country exist, but there's room to have many more, because that's a big sector. All of us in this room are wearing something, so that's a sector that can have a direct impact in terms of creating jobs. If you look at sectors like even agriculture, which is a big contributor also towards manufacturing. I looked at your graph. Half the manufacturing is actually food, 43%. Beverage, and agro-processing sectors. So because of our agricultural economy, agriculture also has the capability to create a lot of jobs, and if well linked with manufacturing and the opportunities for value addition, also a big opportunity for for job creation.
Good point you're raising, very solid point. However, we are yet to see synergy and integration of these different sectors. For example, in the budget, the government only allocated around 50 or 60 billion to the agriculture sector, yet Kenya's manufacturing, a lot of it is agro-based.
Allocation to agricultural sector is something that's debated a lot, because the commitment by African governments is that 10% of our national budgets would be allocated to agriculture. I think from the budget last week, about 3% was allocated to agriculture.
So that's a 7%
lost opportunity.
deficit.
That's a lost opportunity, because as an agricultural country, we really need to take advantage of our competitive advantage, which is agriculture. And we need to take it to the next level, where we're not just selling raw materials, but ensuring that we value add whatever we produce. So I think we can do better as a country in terms of prioritizing agriculture, allocating the right resources to it, ensuring that we mechanize, ensuring that we are productive at farm level, and that would make a big difference in terms of the growth of our economy.
And previously, you've said for manufacturing to contribute 15% to the GDP by 2022, we need to grow by like 35% on a yearly basis.
Yes, that's a fact. Because for us to get to 15%, we are currently at 7.7% contribution to the GDP. To get from 7.7% to 15%, it means we grow at about 36 or even more per annum. So that means all the sectors within manufacturing should really be seeing additional investment, additional consumption, and that can only happen from the angle of having markets to sell, because we need to produce, but we need people to consume what is being produced. So it's demand-led. If the demand exists, the production happens. So it's about local markets, and from the budget last week, there was the issue of local content, where government gave direction for certain products like motor vehicles to be procured from local industry, and also for the 40% local content to be adhered to by government. They also spoke about the fact that we are working together as the Kenya Association of Manufacturers and the ministry to develop a list of what is locally produced that can be procured by government, so that we increase the uptake. The issue also of markets, because we can't only produce for the Kenyan market, but the need to have regional market, international markets where we sell our products is critical. So the full implementation of the National Export Promotion and Development Strategy also will go a long way in growing the sector.
And I like the fact that you brought up local content, because if the manufacturing sector has to grow, then we have to produce our own products back at home. But the problem and the main question has always been the cost of production. But before we delve into that, one of our reporters, Sharon Nyaga, went out to the streets to speak to Kenyans so that we can get to know what you think about the cost of production in this country. And when she spoke to Kenyans, most of them thought the cost of production was high. But who am I and what do I know? Look for yourself.
Do you think the cost of production in Kenya is high?
It is.
Why is it high?
When you look at the cost of inputs, when you look at the energy cost, for instance, electricity, it's pushed up the cost of production.
Definitely the cost of production in Kenya is high compared to our neighbors.
Nowadays in Kenya, the cost of production in farm inputs is higher than what we get after the harvest. So it's obvious it's high.
The tariffs that we pay, they're astronomical, they're through the roof.
For example, when you walk into a supermarket with only 1,000 shillings, you only buy like 2 stuffs and it's over.
So much electricity that we have enough to export, but the supplier locally is doing a work job due to the monopolization of KPLC, which comes with its inefficiency.
The government had said they would create 800,000 jobs. Do you think this is going to happen?
I don't know. I don't know whether the government was serious, but according to my judgment, I think they have done more or less than 10% of what they said.
I think we're actually losing more jobs than we're gaining.
Young youths are jobless, they have no job to work, so I don't think so.
They are creating job for 800 youth job for youth.
According to majority of Kenyans, the cost of production is high and the government has got a lot of work to do. Reporting for Metropol TV, my name is Sharon Nyaga.
Thank you, Sharon Nyaga. Very strong views Kenyans have there, right?
Yeah, true.
But one thing that has been very consistent is the cost of production is high. Starting with electricity, Cadbury shut down in Kenya and went to operate in Egypt, and it's not the first company to do that. Very many others are doing the same.
The issue of cost is a reality. I know we speak a lot about the ease of doing business, but as manufacturers, we've kept saying that we also need to look at the cost, because that's what determines how competitive we are as a country. We looked across the entire value chain last year and just to see where the cost builds up. And we actually figured out that we are at a 13% cost disadvantage. And that starts from what you had, the cost of input, the issue of RDL, IDF. I know it was reduced by 1%, but that's, I mean by 0.5%, but that's still one of the issues around cost. The issue of port and logistics was also leading to a buildup of cost because of the fact that we would pay demurrage at the port, and that's something that also builds up to the final cost. The issue of inspection delays. So the measures I spoke about around PVOC, hopefully fully implemented, can start to address some of those costs. If you move into the in-factory costs, as I produce my goods, the competitiveness at that level is also affected by the cost of input, whether it's a cost of electricity, the cost of labor, also linked to the productivity of labor. That's also a cost factor there. And outbound, as you get your goods out of the factory, there are also costs there. Still transporting within the supply chain, the issues about moving your goods between counties, because we are actually paying distribution permits as you move within different counties. So we did all that, and it's at about 13.3% cost disadvantage. So we are going to recalibrate that based on the implementation of the budget to see the issues addressed, how much that addressed that cost disadvantage that we have. But it is a fact that it's quite expensive to produce, and considering we're in a global market against our competitor countries, the cost needs to come down. Yes.
And you know, the government keeps saying we're doing well, the ease of doing business, we are improving according to the World Bank index, textbook economics, so that's the reality on the ground.
For ease of doing business, it's a reality. We've actually moved to, I think, number 61 at the last count. And from what you said, the ambition is to get Kenya into the top 50 in ease of doing business. Ease of doing business is an important matrix. It measures how you set up your business, how quickly it is for you to get permits and all those approvals.
How quickly is it, though, to get a permit and set up your business in Kenya?
So that's what the ease of business tries to measure. And I think the some of the changes that have been done at the company registry, and some of those have genuinely addressed some of the issues in terms of setting up, getting your electricity permits and everything. The thing is, ease of doing business does not fully measure your day-to-day operational costs. So competitiveness might be a better way to measure that through whether the competitiveness index, or even as a country for us to come up with our own metrics to measure these things, both at national and county level. Because ease of doing business also does not capture the issues at county level, the licensing regimes, the cess charges, the distribution fees, that is not captured. So in order for us to measure correctly how competitive we are, we need to relook at or use a number of matrices, because also the issue about GDP, we also have to look at how far that is trickling down to Mwananchi and other things. So.
But while we are playing catch-up, our neighbors are equally playing catch-up with us. Ethiopia is breathing fire on our neck. Rwanda is catching up with us.
That's true. I think in Africa, one of the things the different presidents have spoken about is the fact that they want to prioritize manufacturing. And because of that, you've seen the countries you mentioned, whether it's Rwanda or Ethiopia, being very deliberate about their manufacturing sector. I think I was reading that Rwanda's manufacturing sector grew by 8.4% last year. Ethiopia, anyone you speak to will speak about the investments they have made in industrial parks and a lot of what they've done. Of course, because they are starting from a lower base, they are growing fast, so that's something that we will play catch up with. But I think as a country, we still have some advantages over those countries. As a Kenyan, I'm proud of that. We have a good labor force, a good workforce. Kenyans are hardworking. They're very productive in terms of labor. The reality is we do have more industries currently. Others are catching up and getting there, but we have a wider diversified economy. So as a patriotic Kenyan, I think that we do have an advantage, but we can't also rest on our laurels. We need to ensure that we are as competitive and we are really keeping up and making it affordable to do business. We are addressing the bottlenecks. We are looking at duplication in regulation and providing an environment that inspires people to produce.
Okay.
Yes.
You've spoken like a patriotic Kenyans, but patriotic Kenyans are also on Twitter and they have a couple of things to say. So I want to take a look at some tweets and let's start with a tweet by at Dan Okari, and he says, question is, how do we ensure we can produce quality products locally at an affordable rate to ensure fair price? This goes to the question of cost of production.
Yes, yes. The issue about how we produce quality products and fair price. Quality products for the market we are dealing in are critical because we're not a closed market. Our consumers have preferences, they have tastes, a lot of them have traveled, have experienced imported products. So even when you produce locally, you have to meet those standards. And our local manufacturers are actually playing in the global scene, are playing in the regional market, and are producing quality products. A lot more can be done, and we are working closely with, whether it's a Kenya Bureau of Standards, to keep harmonizing standards, to, through the technical committees, come up with even more world-class standards. And for the region, in July, we are hosting a COMESA trade fair where we'll be looking at the hallmark of quality, saying even as we open up Africa to trade, how do we ensure that we produce quality products?
How do you reconcile quality and price?
You reconcile quality and price by ensuring that you have a competitive environment where people are able to produce quality products at the least price possible. Because you also still have to compete. So if it's going to be expensive for you to produce a quality product, you won't be competitive in the market. So you can't have one without the other. Your product has to be quality, but at the best price. So the issues we've been speaking about addressing the different things that lead to the cost buildup are critical. And another very important issue, within the ESC community, we have a common external tariff. And I think it's high time we reviewed it. There have been conversations around reviewing it because in some sectors, your raw material and your finished product are the same duty tariff, meaning you don't have that room to do your value addition. So the quality and competitiveness can also be addressed if we look at value chains across different sectors in manufacturing and place products at the correct level, whether it's a raw material, an intermediate product, or finished good, so that you're able then to produce your products competitively.
Now, at James Iraya says, with industries now relying on technology to grow, will the promised jobs be actually realized? And if so, what jobs are those being offered?
Technology is a reality. I think we're talking about the fourth industrial revolution and everything that's happening around 3D printing, artificial intelligence, and other things. And as a country, we are playing in that field already because it's happening in the world. And a lot of manufacturers you visit today are very technologically advanced. But there are certain jobs that can be replaced by machines, and that's a reality. So we will still continue to see sectors able to employ. And technology will make us more efficient. And if we are more efficient, we can be more competitive, we can grow, and in the process still be able to create jobs, whether it's in manufacturing or the other support sectors that support the manufacturing sector through those efficiencies.
Finally, on the Twitter sector, at Stephanie Waswa says, the cost of raw material is high in Kenya, thus making manufacturing very difficult.
That's a fact, and raw materials are from two angles. A lot of the raw materials are agricultural products, and we've talked about agriculture and the fact that until we are very productive at farm level, until we allocate the right resources to support agriculture, move to the days in the 60s and 70s when we even had extension officers going to support farming. We relook even at the fact that agriculture is fully devolved, but have we created the right infrastructure at county level to support the fact that agriculture is devolved? Do we have the right capacities in place? Have we budgeted to ensure that that is happening? Then we are able to produce raw material that is affordable at an agricultural level. Then for importation, I spoke about the fact that we need to fully relook at our common external tariff as an East African region to ensure that it is supportive to manufacturing so that our raw materials are coming in at a price that makes it affordable for you to invest, manufacture those products, and still sell them at a competitive price.
Good point you're raising. Very, very solid points. But the reality on the ground is, when all is said and done, if we do not get good products at a good price, we've created a leeway for substandard goods, counterfeit goods, to make their way in the market. And this is a serious problem.
It is.
In the country, the counterfeit agency has been on it. And if you look at the amount of products being destroyed, is worth millions of shillings. But how did we get here? Corruption at the borders is it porous borders? Is it corruption? Or where's the discord?
I think it's a myriad of issues. You've spoken about the fact that illicit trade is a big issue. When we looked at it, we said about 40% out of research and scoping the market, 40% of the products in the market were illicit goods, whether it was substandard, counterfeit goods, and custom goods, and others. And this is a conversation we had as manufacturers with the president last year. And because of that, the multi-agency team was set up to look at the issues of illicit trade. And some of the challenges are what you said. We have porous borders, and some of those goods make their way into the country, even through our neighboring countries. There are people who want to take advantage of the market opportunity without investing in it. So if I know that you're making your product and I can take your patent and do it and bring it into the country. So that fact that people want to engage in shortcuts and get into the market, there are people who want to evade duties, and all these issues lead to illicit trade in the market. What the multi-agency approach has done, it has had its challenges, I admit, but why it has been positive is that you have to look at the issue of illicit trade from a very multi-agency approach, because one agency on its own will not be able to deal with it. And the direction on having the PVOC updated so that it is holistic. When KEBS is issuing a COC, it should be a COC that not only confirms standards, but confirms that this good is not a counterfeit product, that this is not parallel import coming into the country. So the multi-agency approach of agencies working together to ensure that illicit trade is tackled is critical. And today there was a strategy. Today is actually the World Anti-Counterfeit Day, and there was a strategy launched that we have been working on as CAM, Ministry of Industry, and the Anti-Counterfeit Agency. That is a multi-agency approach to tackling the issues of illicit trade. Yes.
Good stuff. I want you to sip your water.
Thank you.
Because when we come back, we'll be taking a look at more tweets, what Kenyans are saying. Because most of the time, this is a conversation. We want the Kenyans at home to be able to engage you. Those who are in the manufacturing sector to also have a conversation with their CEO. It doesn't happen very more often, only on Metropol Debrief. But right about now, we want to take a short break so that you can log on to Twitter at Metropol TVKE, at Ondiroganga, at Wakiaga_Phyllis. Send your questions, thoughts, and comments, and we shall be sampling them when we come back. See you with Metropol Debrief.